Yo, my peoples, what's up? Welcome back to Shelf Stories, the channel that tells tales from games, books, and life. I am your host, Jason. Thank you so much for stopping by for this latest game chat. Oh my goodness. This has been 6 years in the making, people. Oh, by the way, welcome to the One Stop Call Shop podcast as well. So we have the video show and the podcast. If you're not aware of either platform, you can see this show on either one. Okay, so 6 years in the making. 6 years ago today was my podcast debut. Table for One, episode 6. We covered the Oniverse at the time, and at the time it was, I think it was this much of games. If you are on the podcast, I'm showing Onirum, Sylveon, Castellion, and Urbion right there. Since then, we have gotten 2 more. We got Arion and Nautilion, and they still are in pride of place in my collection. So I've been an Oniverse fan for 6 years. I have played through the One Stop Co-op Shop, all that stuff. I'm embarrassing this man right now. So it has been my pleasure to get to know a little bit this man. We're going to have a conversation today. He is the designer of the Oniverse, the person who conceived this whole thing, and he has a new initiative here to come, so that we're going to talk about all that stuff. He is Shadi Torbey. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jason.
All right. So thank you so much. Like I said, I'm a big fan of the Oniverse. It's been, a long time coming in terms of the solo sphere. So on behalf of the solo community, thank you so much for all the joy that you've given us throughout the years.
Thank you for playing my games.
So let's just start at the very beginning. This is the first time that maybe this audience has gotten to know, you. And there's not too much out there in terms of the press and everything. So maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to design solitaire games.
Okay. So I live in Brussels with my wife and 2 daughters. My real job, so to speak, is I'm an opera singer.
Yes.
That's probably why I started designing board games and solitaire board games, because I have some gaming groups here in Brussels, but obviously when I'm abroad, when I'm singing abroad, I do not always happen to find other gamers. And so I started digging a little bit into solitaire gaming. I enjoy video games, but not that much. So I really wanted to, play something on a table, cards or dice or something.
And also, as an opera, I apologize for interrupting, because I've heard that before about the opera singer, and that's a heavy touring schedule. So it's not easy to.
Some years it's very heavy, yeah.
Especially, but before times, before COVID and everything.
Exactly.
But it's not easy to just sit down and play a video game or some of these other hobbies. But a solitaire card game is you could do that between acts if you want to.
Exactly. Yeah, and this is why I started digging a little bit into it. And when I started, it was more than 10 years ago, and there was not that much choice in solitaire gaming. And I bought a couple of books over Patience, solitaire card, the traditional rules with the 52 traditional card set of cards. And I did not find them very fun. No theme usually, and the mechanics also were usually quite weak. And so I started fantasizing about what could be done. What was possible to what was possible to create. And this is how the Oniverse started, actually.
And what was the first Oniverse? Was it Onirim?
Yeah, actually, I had 2 ideas the first night. I thought about being lost in a labyrinth and having to find, doors and being chased by something. And the other idea was some sort of reunion, conclave of good beings and evil beings trying to get a certain balance between them. And so those were the 2 first games of the Oniverse, Onirim and Urbion Equilibrion. At that time, to be honest, I didn't think of it as having the same theme or the same setting. I was thinking, okay, those are 2 possible themes I would like to try to translate into an actual set of rules. And it's only a bit later when actually I started thinking about the whole connection that were possible, that I established that it could be part of the same universe.
And so Shadi mentioned Equilibrion. So this is Urbion.
Yes.
And it used to be called Equilibrion. I believe there was a IP thing that caused the renaming.
Exactly. Yeah.
I've never heard of an Equilibrion anything. So I don't know.
No,
I don't know what's out there that's called Equilibrion.
Yeah. No, it was not actually Equilibrion. It was Equilibrio, and it was a game, I think, with wooden pieces that you had to actually really balance, one on top of the other. But it was enough for the other company to think there was a danger of confusion. Yeah, and so they confusion, and they asked the name to be changed.
Mm-hmm. And I remember reading about this too. It was because you mentioned before these are separate games, and you started to conceive of them as the same world. I think that came in coordination with the art.
Exactly.
And so maybe tell a little bit. I mean, we're going back, people, and we're gonna work towards the new game, which is Stellarion. So I probably should have said this at the beginning. We are going to talk about the new game, but towards the end. I have Shadi here, so I have to go the whole thing. So we're gonna go back and then we're gonna go forward. So let's go back. The artist, and I'm gonna struggle with the pronunciation, so I'm gonna have you help me out. So the artist helped you realize this shared vision. So maybe tell that story a little bit.
Yeah, so I met Elise actually I think a couple of years before starting working on what would be the Oniverse. At that time, I had a prototype of a game on Opera. This was the first design, and it was not a solitaire game, actually. It was a multiplayer game. And I went to some end of the study. When you graduate in art school, you have this, show where you can, show people what you have done. And she was there, and I really loved what she was, presenting. And I thought, okay, if ever I do a game that is not about opera, that's something more, dreamlike or more, children-like, I will ask her to do the art. And I just took her coordinate. She had a little card, with her email address, and that was it. I think we maybe exchanged 2 words back then, just well done, I like it, oh, thank you, bye. That was it. And then years later, when I had the prototype of Onirim, I wrote her, and I said, I have a game. Do you want to do the art for it? And at that time, the game was Onirim. And the collaboration went really well. And so when I moved into the second project, I thought, okay, actually, why have angels and demons, for instance? Actually, dreams work much better, having positive and negative stuff, trying to reach a certain amount of balance. And so we kept on working also on this project.
Okay. Okay, so then you have these 2 games that you develop. At what point do you contact Zima, or does Z-Man contact you? Because they are the original publishers and wide distributors of both of those products.
Exactly. Actually, I have my prototype that is actually the finalized version. Actually, it's a prototype, so to speak, already with Elise's art for the game. So and actually, eventually, it is going to be published as it is. So, and I'm aware that it could be presented this way. So, and I go to Essen with the idea of founding a publishing house and having Onirim published in French for those French-speaking territories, and finding partners for non-French-speaking territories. Among others, I present the game to Zev Schlesinger, who was the founder and the head of Z-Man at that time, and he's super interested. He asks me to send him a prototype. And then I think a couple of weeks later, he offers me a worldwide contract, an exclusive contract for Z-Man. So at that time, I thought, okay, it's Z-Man game. It was already, very respected, huge publishing house. And I thought, okay, I'm not going to pass on this offer just because I want to do it, for the French territory and find somebody else to do it just for English. So I took the offer. And this is how we started publishing, our collaboration with Z-Man Games.
And this was around what, 2010, 2011,
Yes.
around there?
Yes,
so then at that point, Z-Man, so people who don't know some of the history, I mean, we know Z-Man right now as part of Asmodee. And I see, look, World of Warcraft, Pandemic, and they have like these big, like it wasn't that back then. Like back then, it was just Zev, basically his vision. And he's a huge on like quirky out of the box games like that. Like quirky is cool. That's the thing that he'll say a lot. And so it was a kind of a match made in heaven at that point. And they had big properties. Like I think they had brought over some Euros, including Agricola, and they had Pandemic, which at the time was quirky. It's not quirky anymore. But it was at the time in a cooperative game. This was not a thing. So like they were really kind of outside the box. So like to land like in a way at the time, Z-Man seemed like the perfect home.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And the Oniverse series, did you feel that way?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. When I went to Essen hoping to, get a meeting with them because I thought this would be a perfect match.
Right. And that's really important because like in terms of folks who are finding publishers for their games, don't just ask any publisher. Like, I mean, get to know the publishers and see what their catalog is. And it like, this was a perfect match. And that's what you're looking for. So then away we go. And if I remember the publishing sequence correctly, like these were both small boxes, right? The Urbion and then Onirim, and it didn't have like a bunch of mini expansions. And then at some point there was a decision to go the bigger box. And if you're watching the podcast, I'm showing the boxes. So go ahead and watch the video show if you want to do that. So at some point a decision was made to go a little bit quote unquote deluxe. Every game has a meeple. So, I mean, I know this is a little bit wonky, but I'm very excited. Talk us through the process of that and the product development that where you go from the little boxes to the deluxe big boxes with the meeple in it. Was that a U call? Was that a Z-Man call? Was that a collaboration? How did that work?
Actually, after we published Urbion, the second one, in the small boxes, as you just showed, Z-Man was bought by Philosophia.
Okay.
And Sophie Gravel, who was the boss from the Philosophia at that time. And it became a sort of merged entity, F to Z, Philosophia to Z-Man, basically. And so Zev continued working in this group, and Sophie Gravel was the boss of the new boss of this company, and she really liked those games. And so she called me and invited me to meet her team. And she said, okay, I heard you have other projects in this series. Can you show them to us? And let's see what we do with the whole series. And I think at that time, when she invited me, she already had in mind to reboot it, giving them a better looking presentation and adding the little meeple. So I think this was all Sophie's idea. We brainstormed all together, Zev, Sophie, her team, Sophie's team, myself, to see in which direction we wanted to go. To be perfectly honest, when I started designing the Oniverse, it was not the Oniverse. I just thought it would be cool to have a series of solitaire games. And I had, as I said, the idea of a labyrinth and a conclave of good and evil beings. But then at the time Sophie invited me, it would be 2 or 3 years later, then the whole Oniverse series at that time was developed in my mind. And so it had become one series, coherent with the same artist and with the same setting, this dream world that would expand Onirim, in different aspects of those. And so, so I presented them the whole series, the whole line of games that I wanted to do for this. And Sophie came with her idea of better looking boxes, bigger boxes, those meeples. And then this is how we came to have the Oniverse series as we know it today.
Excellent. And so then the series continues. And so, because I mean, I remember Sylviana Castellian came out very quickly. Like I think it's almost like they were developed not together, but like simultaneously. And I remember reading a designer at the time where it's like, okay, I have some card games, and how far can I each game represents like a take on something. So it's like, okay, I'm going to do tower defense, or I'm going to do tile laying. And so, I mean, at what point did you have that idea of like, okay, this can be my lab, so to speak, to explore different mechanisms in each of the games? Did that develop after the, along the way when it was F2Z, or did you have that idea cooking a little bit earlier?
It was just before the meeting. When the big F2Z meeting took place, I had this whole line of games in my mind, each game being, as you just said, a take on a mechanism. So I wanted each game to be really different, and to explore one aspect of, I would say, modern gaming mechanism that as we know it today. So yeah, at that time, the idea of a saga was already there.
Mm-hmm. And there was a rumor that I think that 10 games were signed. Are you free to divulge that number or something? Or
actually, to be totally honest, we traveled between different numbers.
Okay.
We never signed a fixed amount of games. We always said we are going to take one at a time. So I had a very specific number in mind at that time, and it evolved a bit, basically because there were a couple of games I was not very happy with the 2-player version, because it's true that I started designing and thinking about imagining the whole series as a solitaire series, but very quickly in the process I tried to integrate a 2-player co-op version for Onirim, and I did it also for Equilibrium and Urbion, and then it became a part of the series. And I always was very happy about how the 2-player version developed. And so when along the way a couple of games did not have a very satisfying 2-player version, I decided to put them aside, because I never wanted, you can read sometimes on the internet people saying, I don't want to play this 2-player, I think it's added, it's tacked on it. So it's okay to feel this way, but it's not how we work on it. We really take great care on our 2-player version. And so when I felt that 2 of those games had maybe weaker, in my opinion, weaker 2-player versions, I decided to remove them from the series. So the prototypes still exist, and maybe I will publish them one day as a pure solitaire game, but games since it. But so the number fluctuated a bit, but I would say all in all, the narrative arc that we wanted at that time is still the same now today. We were still aiming for more or less the same, even if in the meantime we moved some, added some, and then we ended up more or less where we wanted to be. Because as I said, there were a couple of games removed from the original plan, but I had some extra idea that replaced them. So we more or less ended up where we, wanted to be.
So is there a narrative? I mean, that I know it's the same setting, and it could be, it would be easy to say, okay, this is that corner of the universe, this is this corner of the universe. And I guess I've never noticed, even in my hundreds of plays of the Oniverse, that there's a narrative in the sense of like, a story beats, beginning, middle, end, crescendo. I tell us about that, because that's something that kind of escaped me, or maybe it's just buried a little bit in the guts of the thing.
No, you're right. It's difficult. I mean, it's difficult. I remember somebody telling me about their nephew, who was a big chess fan. He was like 5 or 6 years old, discovering chess. And apparently the little kid was totally into a story when he was playing chess. He was, oh no, my tower is taking, he's doing this, and my foot soldiers. So maybe for us adults, chess is a really, really abstract and game. It's maybe actually the better example of an abstract game. And no, for this kid, I remember reading on BGG debate whether Lost Cities, Rainer Knizia, Lost City was an abstract game or not. And somebody said, yeah, it's totally abstract. It's the team is totally pasted on. And another one said, no, I really feel this, this path toward, discovering this big old monuments and having this this bet at the beginning, you know, and you're exploring society, if you are going to reach it or not, and you lose points if you so I think those narrative, not narrative, it's also what you put yourself into it. I personally do not want to force a story where, for instance, you will have to play this game, then this one, and this one. Also because I think it's more dreamlike, it's more coherent with the setting if you can come into this universe, into this Oniverse by any door possible. This is also why, because we had this thought, do we put numbers on the boxes or not? Because we could have, you know, on the side of the box, just put number 1 for Onirim, number 2 for Sylvian. And we decided to go against it because, no, you have to come. So yes, it is narrative, but I would say like a weird dream is narrative. It tells a story, but it's not necessarily my story that I want to tell. There is nevertheless a beginning and there will be an end. So there is a sort of arc, narrative arc. But as I said, you could shuffle, you know, it and still have, if you want to, and if you want to see it like a pure abstract game, it's okay. I did not want to add too much flavor text also and too much. I like those things to be left open, you know, for the player to fill if he wants to.
What I will say is, like, so I guess I'm still an adult playing this thing. I'm in my 40s, for crying out loud. But what I will say though is, especially because I like to play the shuffled together games, right? You know, so, and then there's some people that I'll never play the longer games because they're forever and everything. Me, I don't care. Like, if you see the videos in the One Stop Co-op Shop, it is Onirim with 7 expansions. It is Arion with 5 expansions. It is Nautilion with 4 expansions. And what I find is, with the bigger game, yes, it's longer, and there's going to be some people that don't like the longer, that I get wrapped up in it, right? There's enough to where, like, the meeple's moving or something, and, like, you know, there's movements in the game. So, like, you're, you know, an opera singer, so, like, and in music, like, there's movement. So it's like, okay, this beginning part of the game, I'm experiencing this, and then the second part of the game, I've overcome something, but now I'm in the second thing or whatever it is. So it feels like pretty much all the games have that. And was that intentional in terms of the bigger experiences, or did that just kind of emerge happily from having lots of expansions and included every game?
Yeah, I think it emerged. I think as designers, we sometimes have to be humble, you know, and think it's actually the same in singing, you know, because we have this vision that an artist, he has to want to do something in the world. But actually, I think we as opera singers, we sing much better when we just let it flow, you know, do not intervene too much. And maybe in game design, it's the same. Things happen, you know, you guide them, and at a certain point, it's almost as if the game you are designing has its own life, you know, and the game is taking you where he wants to go, not you, you know, designer. Oh, I'm taking the game in this direction. You know, you just have to help it maybe a little bit, you know, be the better version of itself. And then, yeah, it so happened that you have this, you know, bigger game that emerges, you know, with.
Okay.
But I think the better way to go is just to see where it goes.
Right.
Not to decide from the beginning, I'm going to do this. This was my mistake when I started designing games, and I did those game on opera prototypes. They were really bad because I was too ambitious. You know, I was like, I'm going to do a masterpiece of gaming about opera, such a great piece of art, and it's going to be such a great game. And the prototypes were not good. You know, I'm too, you know, ambitious. I was trying to force it. And then, you know, for the Oniverse, I just say, okay, how would this idea work? And then, okay, and then it grows almost by itself.
Right. So excellent. And then adding the expansions, you know, kind of adds more of those layers and everything. I mean, did that come? I remember hearing an interview where you said, like, okay, you would design the game and then you would kind of work backwards. Okay, what's the core of the game? Right. And then once you get the core of the game, okay, base game, and then whatever other ideas you had were expansions. Is that the process that you came up with a majority or some level of expansions for individual games?
Some, but then also the other way around. I mean, yeah, I go back, so it's stripped to its basic, to its core, and then maybe this also helps developing other expansions, because suddenly you have a very pure design who calls for other stuff. Maybe if I had stayed with base game plus expansion 1 or 2 all put together, I would be okay. This is good. Let's leave it this way. By stripping it of its extra, then I can see what could be added to it.
Interesting.
Yeah, I suppose a lot of times this happened also. It really depends on the game, but it's true. Having something and then trying to go as lean as possible. This is something I always do. And sometimes I go back. Sometimes I think, no, this is not interesting. This is too lean. I need something extra. I don't want to have at all cost 6 expansions. If I only have 4 because actually 2 are needed in the base game to make the base game really exist, then so be it. It's not. Yeah.
Okay.
As I said, the game knows what it needs. I know I sound crazy when I
love that. I love no, seriously.
Crazy game designer. My games, they speak to me. They are living beings. No, but you get the idea. As I said, respect it. It's a little bit like singing. We should not interfere too much. I think it's a very Western stuff to put lots of weight into our will and our decisions, and sometimes we have to just things be.
I mean, I feel the same way about my content as a content creator. I feel the same way about I'm a psychotherapist in my real life. I don't come in. I used to come in with like the grand plan. Here's an 8 thing. I'm a cognitive behavioral therapist, which is very kind of planned out. And I can't. Like I co-op. I have my things that my skills that I have. I know generally what I could and can't do, but I can't walk in there going, okay, well, this is today the self-esteem day, or this is today the day we look at this type of thought today. I'll go in 10 minutes, like something will emerge. It's like, okay, we're going to ride with it. And that's the good stuff. Yeah. That's where you can really, I see the smile.
No, it's true. It's exactly this. Yeah.
Watch the video, people. You're going to see a lot of facial expressions and boxes and all that stuff. The podcast is great, but just hop over to the shelf stories, please. This is great. Okay. So now we've made a bunch of games, right? We're at 6 games published in the Oniverse, and Z-Man is continuing to evolve. So Z-Man, F2Z is eventually acquired by Asmodee. And so you can see the company kind of growing up and up and up. And yes. I guess from a designer perspective, I mean, you're just one person with your own little corner staked out. Did you feel the change there? Was it a little bit, I don't know, like did you get the feeling that they had the same passion for the Oniverse as the company was changing, or did that change a little bit?
It's hard to say. I mean, I was in contact with Stephen Kimball, who was the head of Z-Man at the time, just after, as you said, Z-Man and Philosophia was bought by Asmodee. And he is a very enthusiastic person who loves games. I did not absolutely not have the feeling that suddenly I was talking to corporate people who did not care at all about games and were just thinking about the bottom line. Not at all, because this would be a very good story to tell, I was, at Z-Man when it was a small company, then it got bought by evil Asmodee, and those are evil corporate people. But it's not true.
And there are some people that tell that exact story. So with Fantasy Flight as an example, like Fantasy Flight, they were doing, a Cosmic Encounter and all these games. And then they get acquired and the wheels of commerce churn. And then we get the 5th Cthulhu game and it becomes very like, okay, what will sell? So I mean, it's good to know that that didn't happen across the board. Like there was still an instinct to make great games.
I did not feel it. Maybe eventually this is what happened, but I mean, the person I had the most contact with, which was Stephen, and did not give me this impression. So we worked together on Stellarion, which was the last game, we did this with Z-Man. And the collaboration went really well. I mean, we got along well. We were happy about the product. The game was very well received. The reviews were good. The sales, the numbers were good. So the only stuff, to be perfectly honest, you asked me if I could, say honestly about if I had signed an NDA. I did not. So I can tell you honestly. the only big difference that I felt is that everything took more time. So in this aspect, I felt that I was in a much bigger company. It was not just one guy, Zev Schazinger, who could decide in 10 days after receiving a prototype, I'm doing this, here's the contract, sign it, we are in business. And with Sophie, it was almost as fast. It was a bigger team than with Zev, but still, the decision was centralized. It was, one people calling the shots, and the decision were quite fast. It was a little bit slower, And with Asmodee, things were much slower because Stephen, I don't think, could decide everything on his own. He could take obviously decisions, but he had to, refer to, higher powers, and it was a bigger organization. So and this maybe, plus, maybe some other, but it's hard to really put words on this. I described it, in an article, like feeling like an independent movie maker being in a big studio.
Sure.
Like suddenly, you do independent movies, and suddenly your company is bought by Marvel Studios, So, okay, you work with those people, and probably a lot of people at Marvel Studios are totally passionate about movie making and about, superheroes and stuff, but still it's a very huge structure, And so, if something did not feel right, I would say it's more this. Than being surrounded by evil corporate. This I did not have this feeling. I did not have the feeling of being surrounded by evil corporate, but I had the feeling that I was maybe in a very, very, very big machine. Now, maybe a bit too big for the series.
Yeah, I think because I'm a culture consultant and I'm working with a big company. This is an NDA, so I can't really reveal it, and I can tell I can resonate with that. These are great people, and they love games, but there's a lot of them. and there are at different levels of a company. So it's like you have your art people, but there's an art team. So it's like, you have your artist that you work with, Elise, but then it has to go through these checks. And it's like, okay, this department has to see it. And then if this person has a problem, then they have to wait until that person sees it. And it's like, there's just a lot of chefs in these kitchens, and it comes out because like the distribution is amazing. Like you get these games can reach all over the world. So it's when you're indie, you make solid products, but the distribution is a little bit difficult. And these bigger companies, they don't care. Having said that, though, Z-Man was really famous at some point, and I'm talking from the solo community. Oniverse was almost never in print. as soon as Oniverse showed up, zoop, it was such a struggle to keep Oniverse, especially Oniverse in print. I think you could get the other ones, but this one was kind of the seminal one. I don't know if you felt that. I don't know if it worked out in the same in different countries, but at least in America, Oniverse was hard to get for a long time. Was that something that you encountered?
Yes, and especially when they launched the app, there was not a really good coordination around the launch of the app, and so it went sold out immediately, and then we were like, it was a bit frustrating because we had a great, the app obviously is a great advertising tool. Also, sure. I mean, I love the app. I think it's well done, but besides it being well done, it's also a good tool to promote a game. And at the time, we did not have a lot of physical copies in stores, so it was a bit like, oh, this is a missed occasion. So.
Yeah, I love that app, and they should have released all the expansions. They stopped after 3, and I would have loved to have seen all of them. But that's the way it goes. Okay. So then at some point, and this I don't know, and I don't know the story at all, but I was looking for some information on it. At some point, there is a decision to open your own publishing house. So we call it Inpatience.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. Because actually the decision came from Z-Man. They told me we are not going to continue the series.
Okay.
So the sales were good, the reviews were good, but we are interested in developing other projects that could aim for other type of numbers than what you can deliver. Very consistent numbers, very stable, but we want to invest into something else. Mm-hmm. And we think you would be better off, with a smaller publishing company, which, as I said, did not come as a huge shock. I mean, I was obviously a bit surprised because we did very well with Stellarion, but as I said, my feeling of being, maybe in a structure that was a little bit too big, as you said, a lot of great people, but a lot of them, I was a bit surprised, but not shocked by the decision. And they were very nice. They told me, we know other publishing houses, smaller ones, that would be so happy to have your series. We can, make the presentation, the introductions,
Oh, wow.
and then almost right away, I thought, okay, no, but maybe this is the time to eventually do the project I had from the beginning of the Oniverse series, is to open my own publishing house. And so this is what I did, and this is how Inpatience came to be.
And did they transfer the rights to all the games back to you? Because that doesn't always happen. Sometimes they keep, like, if it's a hot seller, they'll keep one or two. So like Plaid Hat also separated from Z-Man because they went to their own thing, but they kept Dead of Winter and they kept some of the bigger IP. And I think Plaid Hat is trying to like reboot a little bit with their own stuff. So did that happen? Was there a discussion about that? Was it easy? How did it go?
It was not super easy, but I must say, and this is also another chapter of evil corporate that we will not tell today, because it was not evil. Because there was a risk that they would sit on Onirim, because obviously it was a good seller, and then you can take the other bags, which would have compromised a bit. I mean, obviously the mechanics you can always transpose, you can always retheme, you can always, but it would somehow destroy the series.
Yes.
You would have had Onirim, and then I mean, continue with the other titles. It would have been weird retheming them. Yeah, probably this would have been the better solution, but it would have been a pity, because it was still considered, as a whole, as I said, a whole gaming saga. And they did not do this. So I must say they have been also gentlemen about this. Is why we are not going to write a chapter of, on how evil the corporate always is, because they were not evil in this case. They, sold me, the whole package for a fair price. So it was not, yeah. So it was a very honest deal, and I was able to, keep the series alive as a whole, and not just, having to re-tinker the whole stuff together.
That gives me faith in humanity. I'll tell you that right now. It isn't all just capitalism grinds everybody down. We can get something new emerging. So let's talk about the new. I mean, you said that like launching a publishing studio is an undertaking. Like, that is not easy, because you have to. I mean, you could say, okay, I can make games, I can design games, but like that, now you're entering into production and distribution, and I, is that something where it's like you've been preparing the last 10 years for this because you've been exposed to something? How is that all kind of coming together?
Just very partly, I would say. Obviously, I was exposed a bit, just watching how. I wanted to say my publishers. It was only one publishing house, but as we said at the beginning of this interview, it went through different stages.
Right.
So I saw more or less how a one-person operation would work with Zev. Then I saw how a family business would work with Sophie, and then how a big corporation could function. So yes, but there were obviously loads of stuff I didn't know at all, and so I mean, the best comparison I could give, it's like a legacy game. You know more or less what is your final goal is, but then you keep opening envelopes, and having new rules that you have to learn. But it's been a very fun ride until now. But it's true, you have to learn lots of new stuff. Some bits, and then new bits come along basically all the time.
So. And so tell us about the vision for Inpatience. I mean, is it the Oniverse publisher? Will there be more games? Is it and I think what people want to know is, like, I mean, reprints. Are we going to get new printings of the older titles?
Okay, so it is going to be the house of the Oniverse, but not only. And it is not going to be the house of Shadi Torbey's games, because I already signed 2 designed by other game designers. I'm very proud and very excited about those. What we are going to do in general is, as the name Inpatience hints to, all of our games are going to be playable as solitaire games.
Sure.
But not only. For instance, for the moment, we do not have any game plan that will be only a solitaire game. We do not exclude it. We will do it eventually, games that are only for one player. So far, we only have solo plus co-op. games plan. But so, I mean, what will be the common trait to all of our games? They can be played solo. You will never see a game that starts with 2 or 3 or 4 players. You know, it will always be 1, 2, something. You know, only one player. This will be, you know, our philosophy in publishing, branding. So this will be it. So
and
yes,
we get and reprints.
Yeah, reprints. Obviously, so we are starting this year by reprinting all the Oniverse games, you know, with our new label, with our new brand. And we are going with to start with Stellarion, which is number 6 or 7 if you count Urbion. But actually, Urbion is coming back. You know, so this is the second part of reprints. When you say reprints, is we are going to reprint all the already published games in this bigger box you showed. And as for Urbion, who was never republished into this bigger box game size, it will come. We plan it in 2 years. So actually what we plan is to have one Oniverse game each year. So this year in 22, we will have Stellarion. Next year, we will have another game. And then the year after, we will have Urbion. So this is the plan. And we also plan to have each year another game that would not be an Oniverse game and that would not be designed by me. So this is the plan those are the plans for the future.
It's a very exciting. I think you always get that question every once in a while. They'll post on BGG, okay, are we going to get the second printing of Urbion? And at one point, Z-Man came into one of the forums. They're like, we're not doing this. That is not happening. It's like, all right, then. So then when I heard about the new studio, I'm like, okay, we're like getting one and we have confirmation. That's great. Okay, so the people want to know about Stellarion. There's not much on the BGG page. It says deck management.
Yes. So
is the Oniverse returning to its kind of deck of cards roots with Stellarion?
Yes and no. Actually, Stellarion, I would say, as I said at the beginning, when I was thinking about the whole series of the Oniverse, I wanted each game to be a take on a particular game mechanism. So that we would never have 2 games that are the same. Right. And actually, maybe there's a little exception between Stellarion and Aerion. There are 2 very different games, but they have a big part of their DNA. They share a big part of their DNA. And I will explain now how and why. The basic idea behind Aerion was to do a dice game.
Yahtzee. Stellarion Aerion is Yahtzee, a Yahtzee with cards, yeah.
Exactly. But unlike lots of Yahtzee-like games, usually the Yahtzee-like games where you have to have dice combinations, they give you free rerolls. Because obviously, when one roll, I mean, if you play the Castles of Burgundy, you don't have any rerolls, you just roll. But it's okay, because you don't try to have combinations. You can do something with your dice, even if it's not what you wanted. You can always find a way around. So there would be no point in having rerolls in Castles of Burgundy. Actually, it would defeat the purpose of the game. The purpose of the game is, okay, I got this roll, what can I do? So usually in the Yahtzee style games, you have to have rerolls, because otherwise you roll once and then you're, okay, I didn't get what I want. Bad luck. That's it. So,
right.
And I wanted to do, it's almost as borderline sadistic to do a game where you would have to have Yahtzee combinations with no free rerolls, but you would pay your rerolls by discarding precisely the cards that your dice results allow you to take. And that's it, basically. You know, you aim to get, you know, you aim for certain dice results in order to buy cards with your dice result. But if you want to re-roll, you have to discard precisely cards from the display, you know, cards that you want to acquire. So I was hoping that with this kind of, you know, not, you know, contradictory, you know, desire, or I need this roll, I need to re-roll, I need to discard, I would have a game with fun decisions, you know, and hard dilemmas. And this is basically what I got. But along the way and very quickly in the process, I thought it would not be good to have all the cards shuffled into one deck, because if the display of the cards is random, if you add this randomness to the randomness of the dice, you will have a totally random game sometimes, and a really frustrating one. Right. So I thought, okay, to avoid this, I will divide the resources, the cards, you know, into predetermined decks. So you know exactly the content of each deck at the beginning, and it's the same in each game. Arion. Obviously, the cards do not come up in the same order, and obviously the dice. So you have enough randomness, but not too much.
Mm-hmm.
And while testing the game, I realized actually that managing those decks was a huge part of the game. It was obviously a dice game. This is what I had planned, and this is what the game had become. It is a dice game, but with an element of what I call deck management, because you have those decks, various decks, and you have to manage all those. And so the next step was, okay, how would this work without any dice? Can I do a game that is a pure deck management game? And this is how Stellarion was born, replacing actually one of those games that did not have a satisfying two-player version I was talking about at the beginning. So, and so in Stellarion you have 8 decks instead of 6. You need more decks since you don't have the dice, element. And now you only play with the top card of each deck. So either you have the combinations you need to get to the victory, or you don't have, and then you can discard pairs of cards to trigger effects that may give you the cards you need. But obviously, by discarding those cards, you remove resources that also could be helpful, to get them to the victory. So I have a dilemma that is somehow similar to this of you have in Arion, to the dilemma you have in Arion, but concentrated really on the decks of cards.
And are the decks like laid out? So you have like piles and piles of decks, and
you have eight decks.
8 decks, and then you're working through and bringing order from chaos and using your powers and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And Stellarion being like outer space, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. It's in the observatory. So the observatory we know from Onirim. It's one of the 4 rooms. And so it all happens in the observatory. You have to make voyages into the galaxies of the Oniverse, and a voyage needs 4 different cards that you will have on top of the decks. So to go into a galaxy, let's say Galaxy Alpha, you need a ship that goes into there, and then you have to triangulate your destination by having stars, planets, and nebula of this galaxy. So you need those 4 cards. And if you don't have them, then you must do the discard 2 cards of the same type, for instance, 2 ships, to get a card you want, from the deck. And so this is how you try to build up your series of 4 cards, 4 different cards of the same galaxy to go into one of those galaxies.
And this is in Kickstarter, like this is going to retail, right? Just straight to retail. Well, tell me about the decision behind that, because that seems to be the obvious thing, is to kickstart because of the, you get the upfront funding and you get the, the advertising, because Kickstarter is a platform, everything. Tell us about the decision to just, go straight to retail.
I don't know. Maybe I'm a little bit too old school. I don't know. Maybe it's a bit of a romantic vision, but I have the feeling that people, maybe the stores, the real life stores helped also the Oniverse exist. By promoting it, by having those games on their shelves. And
it's a great display. Because usually it'll be a section with a bunch of them together, and together they form a nice little panorama just visually.
And so in this case, I wanted to to support the friendly local game stores, and then it is also a series. People have proven faithful to the series, so I hope they will keep being faithful to it. So maybe I did not feel that I needed to to bypass the stores and the regular customers of the stores, because they were faithful to the previous chapters of the series. This is the decision behind it. Then, to be honest, it's also not. There are, if those games, you open those boxes, there is game components in it. Sure. So it's not cheap to produce, but it's also not games with a ton of minis, and so maybe it's not really justified. Also, if one day Inpatience has a huge game to produce and it's not viable through traditional distribution, I'm not saying I don't ever want to do a Kickstarter in my life, but why, if you can if you can just do it the regular way, and as I said, support the stores, allow them to have those games on display, allow people to discover it also.
Absolutely.
They will not go necessarily on the internet, because also if you think, it's maybe a little bit abstract now what I'm saying, but on the more how can I say, on the consistency of the philosophy behind it. I mean, those are solitaire or two-player games, real games. So you don't play on a computer, you don't play on your phone. So you play in real life. So you go to a real store to get those games, you know, not necessarily on the internet. Maybe there's something also there. It's maybe more consistent not to buy on the internet, you know, to create on the internet a game that you will end up playing on your table.
Yeah, I mean, that's how.
So
that's how the entire line has gone. I mean, the entire line has been direct to retail, and you know, there's no reason why. I mean, it's just one of those things where it's like new publishing house, and you know, maybe a new vision, but it's like, no, we're sticking with the old vision. This is what worked for the Oniverse, and this is how we're going to do for the foreseeable future. And it sounds like, you know, one game a year. So it's like we got Stellarion, we're getting Urbian eventually. I won't ask about the future games because no one ever tells me. You'll tell us when you're ready. Actually, I'll ask it in general. Are there mechanisms that you haven't explored yet that we could possibly look forward to? So we've gotten roll and move, like the advanced roll and move of Nautilion. We got tiling. We got the Yahtzee style. We're getting deck management. Is there a, you know, deck building, worker placement? Are there any mechanisms that call to you that we might possibly look forward to in the Oniverse? Or can you not even answer that one?
No, I can answer that one. One of the games that was removed from the series, I tried to have a twist on worker placement.
Okay.
So this we are not going to see. So what are we going to have? There will be a little bit of development. Let's say this engine, a little bit of it. And then there is going to be, I was mentioning chess somewhere in the interview, so I would say more abstract, you know, something more, but abstract is not a very good tell. How do you, there is an, you know, more those spatial, you know, stuff. There is going to be, this is one of the stuff that are planned.
Nice.
And yeah, and to be perfectly honest, actually, you will have all the information. I mean, in the box of Stellarion, we have added a little catalog that you know, a little how do you say it? A little advertising booklet that will show exactly where we want to go. So it's going to be very long before actually it is made public exactly how many games we are planning to have in the series. So before it's the end of the series.
All right, so you got a long road to hoe, and I know a lot about artists could be very, very excited to come along on the journey. And then you have other games as well. Is the game by Morten Monrad Pedersen? Is that the one of the games that you were looking at? So
Absolutely.
It is a game that I cannot pronounce. It's from I think is Danish lore or, you know, Scandinavian lore or something like that.
Absolutely, it's Danish. It's very specific Danish lore. The game is called Skoventier.
Skoventier. Okay.
It's because we found the name. It's Skoven is the forest in Danish, and Eventyr is the fairy tale or the folk tale. And Skoventier is a word that does not exist, but it was made combining those two words. So yeah, we're very excited about this. Is a one co-op multiplayer, solitaire multiplayer cooperative game that, as you hinted to, it's the lore is the Danish folklore, but the authentic. Then it's not Andersen's Tales. I love Andersen's Tales, but those are a reworking, a more elaborate, you know, more cultivated reworking of an invention, also because Andersen invented some stuff. But for this one, for the theme of this game, we really went to the testimony of folk people telling them as they were transcribed by scholars who were, you know, walking through the you know, the country and writing those folk tales. So yeah.
And in the interest of full disclosure for everybody, I was consulted by Morton on that game to check some of the religious aspects.
Okay.
Because you have to be pretty careful. And nowadays, what you're saying, if someone has like, some Christian background or different backgrounds. And so Morton and I are working together on this. And you've helped me pronounce the name. Hopefully I'll remember the pronunciation.
But it's interesting that you were speaking about the religious aspect, because obviously all the people, they were living in a very religious environment, all the people in the 19th century, and before. But it's interesting also how they used all those elements.
Sure.
So maybe because it was their everyday life, they could maybe allow themselves some freedom, speaking about churches that were haunted or cursed and stuff like this, that could appear shocking for us, exactly as how we read, when we read in what people were writing in the Middle Ages about monks that were, having adventures with women and eating and stuff. But it was so near to them, the religion at that time, that for them it was okay to joke about it. Obviously, being more distant from this, it could appear shocking, or disrespectful for people, in our century. So yeah, it is actually a elements that we have to handle carefully.
Yep, and that's going to be my role, is to. I'm working with Martin to do that. So because I'm a master of theological studies. I have a master's in religion. So I'm pretty up on this stuff. I'm very excited. Very excited. I can't believe I spoke for an hour with Shadi Torbey. This is amazing. So we're looking forward to it. So we have Stellarion coming. We have more from Inpatience, which is its own publishing studio. The plan is to continue going, and we don't know when the show. You may know in the back of your mind when the Oniverse is going to end, but we don't know. We're going to keep that as a surprise, because we're going.
But you will know very soon. You will know very soon, as soon as you open a box. Actually, a box of Stellarion or a box of any of the republished, reprinted Oniverse games. You will see the booklet tells not everything, but gives already a lot of information.
Okay. Actually, I should ask this in closing, because I get a little nervous when there's a reprint, because are you going to change any of the mechanisms? Do I need to buy the new versions, or am I good with the Z-Man versions?
No, this is really something I did not want to do, to force people to buy it. So the only thing we have changed is we added a little variant for the little figure of the evil guy in Oniverse.
Okay.
But this we will make available either on the website, on our Facebook page.
Mm-hmm.
We will never force anybody to rebuy a game just for a variant like this. We were thinking actually of integrating the goodies expansions that were not available into the boxes, and eventually we did not do it. One of the points against it was this: we would then force people to buy a whole game again just for two goodies or one, Oniverse and Sylvian, and this could be interpreted the wrong way. Right. So we are still trying to figure out a way to make those expansions available, easily available, especially for people who live outside the States, because you could order them. Maybe you can still from Z-Man's website, but if you were living in Europe, it was much more expensive to do it. So we are trying to find a way to make them available. But no, basically, except the logo and some very minor changes in some, formulation for consistency and stuff like this, those boxes, if you have them, you can, hold on to them. You don't have to buy them from us again.
Yes, they're mine. Shadi Torbey, thank you so much for joining me for this hour. This has been amazing.
Thank you for having me.
If you can change your mind, you can change the world, people. So until next time, later, everybody.